Is Deborah Trapp. I work at the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service as part of what is currently known as the Marketing Services Division, hopefully soon to be the Local Food Research and Development Division, which gives you a sense of where we're headed. I have been at USDA for 23 years, and much of it, and certainly the last dozen years, and mostly as a first-line supervisor in overseeing a lot of our market research in direct marketing and increasingly in local food systems. And what I've done here is try to piece together what we know is fairly scant information about demand and growth of local food markets, and see what they seem to mean. What is the industry saying to itself, the supermarket industry, the grocery industry, consumers' polls, about what is driving the local food interest. And so I call this Why Local Food Matters, Views from the National Landscape. So here are the order of things that we're going to talk about today. What do we mean by local food? The relationship of local food to the U.S. food system in terms of the importance of local food demand, the growth of local food marketing outlets on various demand drivers and trends. We'll talk a bit about what does the future of local food look like, and is there room for further growth, and what might be driving that further growth. And lastly, how do AMS programs facilitate market access for local food? So first, let's talk about what is local. I think the most important thing to recognize is that USDA is a little bit agnostic on what is local. We do not regulate the definition of local except in very, very broad terms, and leave it to communities to define for themselves, because frankly, geography and production areas, really a lot of natural boundaries really enter into many communities' definition of local. At a basic level, local food is a food product that is raised, produced, aggregated, stored, processed, and distributed in the locality or region in which the final product is marketed. Again, no official national designation, though there are some individual USDA programs that use a very broad definition, which is less than 400 miles from the origin of the product or within the state in which the product is produced. We look at it from a pretty broad point of view, including both direct-to-consumer sales, such as farmers markets or CSAs, as well as intermediated sales of locally grown food by distributors, food hubs, aggregators, and the like that are going to wholesale customers. So, how does this relate to what consumers are looking for in food? And I found this quote from Phil Lambert, who is a well-known industry observer in the grocery industry. This is from 2013. He says, "People are choosing their foods more holistically based on multiple food factors." So we're really looking at a bundle of attributes that they're seeking: taste, ingredients, source, nutritional composition, asking who is making their foods, and understanding the impact of these foods on environment and animal welfare. And if you look at that list, it seems pretty obvious that in many ways, local food really speaks to satisfying a lot of these emerging consumer desires. Another thing that we've seen in recent years is quite a steep decline in consumer dependence on the neighborhood supermarket as a primary source of food, especially perishables and consumables. In 1994, the traditional supermarket format represented 81% of U.S. grocery retail sales. That had dropped within 10 years to just over half, 52%. And according to a recent retail report by Jones Lang LaSalle, in 2013, it's believed that just over 40% of U.S. grocery retail sales were represented by traditional supermarkets 2 years ago, and that is likely to drop to 37% by 2018. So what's picking up the slack here? Well, you'll see that We've got a little bit of a rise in the rural super centers, slightly in wholesale format stores. But interestingly, the fastest growing format, while still small, is the fresh format or limited assortment store. And what's interesting to note about fresh format stores is that they tend to emphasize perishables and offer center store assortments that differ from those of traditional grocery retailers, especially in the areas of ethnic, natural, and organic foods. The most prominent examples for Whole Foods and the fresh market. So it tells you a bit about, how consumer behavior is gravitating towards a desire for high-quality fresh fruits and vegetables, and having the ability to make that a mainstay of one's diet. So we're seeing, again, that local food demand seems to correspond to some of these changing consumer needs, and that translates, of course, into changing buyer preferences. What are some of those characteristics that correspond with growing consumer demand for freshness and product integrity and transparency? Well, local food offers the consumer the opportunity to obtain food items with superior quality characteristics, freshness, flavor, ripeness, enhanced shelf life, possibly enhanced nutritional density, but we really don't know. The literature really isn't that widespread yet on demonstrating improvement. But there certainly is a perception in terms of freshness that perhaps local food could be at times nutritionally superior. It also, especially in direct marketing arrangements, provides an opportunity for the consumer to learn more about the farming practices used to produce the food that they're purchasing, and therefore to have some greater confidence in the integrity and quality of the food they purchase, and have the opportunity to reward those growers that conduct sustainable production practices that meet their preference. What are some of the reasons that household grocery shoppers embrace local food? Well, according to a couple of recent reports from A.T. Kearney and from the National Restaurant Association, they indicate or 2/3 indicate it was because it helps local economies. 60% because it delivers a broader and better assortment of products. You think about some of the heirloom varieties, for example. 45% state that it provides healthier alternatives. Interestingly, fewer than a fifth mention improving the carbon footprint or increasing natural organic production. These years ago were often thought to be some of the major drivers behind local food. But as local food becomes more mainstream, I think that those motivations are changing. I think it's important for us to be aware of that. And it also indicates that I think we're starting to move beyond this a core group of dedicated consumers and locavores to a much greater mainstreaming of this phenomenon. In 2014, approximately 70% of restaurant operators said their patrons were more interested in locally sourced items than they were 2 years earlier, and that figure rises to 90% for fine dining restaurants. I wanted to mention a new study that actually is still in clearance, but Dr. Ianvasi at the University of Iowa just presented this at the latest American Sociology Association. What he's found through his research, and I think very much comports with what I'm saying through a lot of case study analysis, is that the local food market is what sociologists call a moralized market, a market in which people combine economic activities with their social values. It's not just about the economical exchange, it's the relational and ideological exchange as well. It's about valuing the relationship with the farmers and the people who produce the food, and believing that how they produce the food aligns with your personal values. And from my perspective, I think this very much fits much of the work we've been doing around food value chains. How do you marry business transactions with the ability to advance a set of principles around social, economic, and environmental values? So one other observation from the researchers at the University of Iowa said that they indicated that interest in local food markets were more likely to develop in areas where residents had a strong commitment to civic participation, health and the environment. And I see when will the, okay, I don't know if it's a PPT, will mine be available? I will let Rachel answer that. I thought it was the report. I was doing this report out of Iowa, I'm not quite sure, but I think it's in clearance right now. Moving on, this is a list of the What's Hot Chef survey that the National Restaurant Association puts together, and I thought it would be useful to take a look at the top 10 menu drivers for 2015, and I have highlighted those that I thought, I mean, frankly, just about all of them could conceivably have some tie to local food, but many of them have very explicit tie, we see here. Number 1, locally sourced meats and seafood. Number 2, locally grown produce, which of course has been on this top 10 list for some time. Number 3, environmental sustainability. Number 5, natural ingredients or minimally processed foods. 7, hyper-local sourcing, such as restaurant gardens. 8, sustainable seafood. And 10, farm or estate branded items. So what I think this tells us, or in part, is that local food is not a passing fancy, that there are many drivers and there are kind of multiple repercussions that we're seeing among multiple drivers, among consumers, and the chefs that are leading this charge, and that even though we may see that produce, the demand for that is, may have peaked a bit, we still are seeing demand for locally produced foods of other varieties that have barely been realized. So I think there is certainly a lot of encouraging news here about where we might go in terms of market forces. We're also finding from recent National Grocery Association and other consumer panel surveys that the availability of locally grown produce and other local food, packaged food, are major influences on a typical household's grocery shopping decisions. In the latest panel survey conducted in 2014, a combined 87% said it was either very or somewhat important to their choice of a primary food store, just about at the, staying at the same levels it has been for the last 2 years. Very interesting, I thought, was leading the very important component, 44% overall. Hispanics, 53%, said it was very important. That could reflect the interest in scratch cooking and the use of fresh fruits and vegetables and really caring about freshness as an attribute in ingredients. Single-person households who may have the discretionary income. Adults between the ages of 50 and 64 who are really looking to eat more healthily and feel better. All of these are things we should think about as potential audiences for local food, potential targets of local food marketing efforts. 2/3 of the survey respondents endorsed the efforts of their primary supermarket to support nearby local food sources. So once again, not a niche group, but really the majority. We're finding that shoppers will switch stores for local food selection. More than 2/3 saying their supermarket offers at least some types of locally sourced food. 30% say they would consider purchasing food elsewhere if the preferred store did not carry local food. Only 5% say that they will shop for local foods at big box retailers, 15% at national supermarkets, and their main source for local food still remains farmers markets and farm stores. Now, this next chart is, it's a bit dated, so we probably would even see more interest in the farmers market and direct producer outlets that we see in the study from 2006. But even based on 2006 data, National Consumer Panel data, this was conducted by Dawn Thilman, Eva McFadden, and her team at Colorado State University, we see that 3/4 of the survey consumers considered their supermarkets a primary food source, but when it came to a primary source of fresh produce, only 56% said so. Similar with the warehouse clubs and supercenters, you know, primary food source 19%, for fresh produce 10%. And look at this, you go to farmers markets, 1% is a primary food source, but 25% is a primary source of fresh produce. Another 12% is a secondary source. Direct from producer. Again, you see the disparity between primary food source, not really surprising, but as primary source of fresh produce, picking up to 5%. So again, I think it really speaks to a lot of residual demand and that real interest in, you know, meeting people's needs at a variety of levels, looking for taste, looking for quality, looking for relationship with the grower, looking for information, looking for integrity, looking for trust. And okay, so here we're going to talk a little bit more about the whole trust and the pervasiveness of interest in local. This is from the 2013 analysis by A.T. Kearney, and the shoppers against all these various segments were asked, were they willing to pay more for local? The percentage of respondents responding yes, not surprising. The highest level is among single urban households, young couples without kids, affluent families, these being, you know, those with presumably more discretionary income. But how interesting that even as we go to the senior citizen column, middle income family, low income, more than half indicate they're willing to pay more. Again, this is really related to trustworthiness. And we see the differences on a 1 to 10 scale. Big box retailers are rated 5.4, national supermarkets 6.6, locally owned supermarkets 7.4, natural food markets 7.8, and the top of the chart 8.2 for farmers market. Again, really an interesting phenomenon that I think is very much undergirding what we're seeing happening in the marketplace. Okay. Now let's look at some national statistics. What is local food's contribution to the national food system? Well, from the census, you know, the latest ag census, it looks like, you know, it doesn't look like it's that impressive. But it's very important to keep in mind what exactly is being counted in the census statistics. The one statistic that we have a little bit of time series data on is a very, very narrow indicator. And it only covers direct-to-consumer sales, so it does not cover intermediate sales, which we will talk about in a bit, and we'll see is the vast majority of local food sales. It only covers agricultural products for human consumption, so it does not count things like cut flowers or nursery products or things like that. So if you look strictly at that direct-to-consumer sales of agricultural products for human consumption versus total agricultural sales, yes, 0.3%. However, if you look at other structural factors, and you look at the intermediated side of local food sales as well as direct, according to our friends at ERS, work that they published earlier this year, you'll see that nearly 8% of U.S. farms participated in local food marketing channels. Not huge, but not insignificant either. And again, part of the reason it's only 8% overall is that you have geographic concentration. So what are those characteristics where you see greater involvement in local food sales? Well, in general, it's where you have vegetable, fruit, and nut farms. For direct-to-consumer sales in particular, they tend to dominate where climate and topography favor fruit and vegetable production, proximity to farmers markets and local food farms, access to transportation information networks, and where the value of local food, not surprisingly, is highest in population-dense metropolitan areas, and it's geographically concentrated in the Northeast and on the West Coast. Another thing to keep in mind, as we were hinting earlier, is that much of the demand for local food we're seeing the bulk of that demand growth in the intermediated sales part of the local food sector. So between 2007 and 2014, farmers markets, the number of farmers markets grew by 180%. In that same time span, the number of food hubs was estimated to increase by almost 300%, and the number of farm-to-school programs to increase over 400%. Why are we saying this? Growth of local food demand is increasingly shifting towards intermediated marketing channels, prompted by several reasons, including, as we mentioned, the retail and food service buyer interest in meeting consumer demand for local foods, producer interest in catering to higher volume wholesale clients, and certainly being able to, it helps them scale up the volume of what they're producing because they can find a market outlet. Comparatively low revenues from labor-intensive direct-to-consumer marketing, such as farmers markets, which for a season, recent statistics from ERS indicated that it was something in the $8,000 range per vendor, per market. Growing producer ability to provide deliveries of local products in commercial-sized volume over longer portions of the year. And certainly that's where food hubs and other aggregators are playing a role. And it's also where season extension technology is playing a role with hoop houses, high tunnels, enabling people to deliver product over a longer period of time. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the move towards intermediate sales and the interest on the part of the grower. Looking back at the ERS information from January, out of the total estimated 2012 local food sales of $6.1 billion, about 55% was generated by farms that only used intermediate wholesale marketing channels, and that represented about $148,000 per farm. In comparison, about 19% was generated by farms that exclusively use direct-to-consumer channels such as farmers markets and CSAs, and the revenue from that activity was only just over $10,000 per farm. So you could really see huge disparity in income potential between the two channels. Now, that's fine, but it's not always so easy for growers to access these larger volume marketing channels. And why is that? And I'm speaking to the choir here. I know most of you already know this. We'll just go over it briefly. Often individual operators lack the capacity to meet buyer requirements for volume, quality, consistency, extended availability, etc. And farmers are often challenged by the lack of distribution, processing, and marketing infrastructure that would give them this wider market access. The other thing that's happening at the same time is that commercial buyer requirements, their tolerance in some degree is narrowing, especially when it comes to issues relating to food safety, traceback mechanisms, and record keeping. And often the smaller and mid-scale farmer does not have the individual capacity to maintain those adequate records or the product monitoring systems, or has the access to the third-party certification that some of the buyers are beginning in both retail and institutional food service markets are beginning to demand. And of course we have FSMA hot on our heels, and we have yet to know exactly how that is going to materialize, but certainly we can expect that the expectation of the buyer, wholesale buyer, is probably only going to rise. So what USDA has been doing, and both in its research technical assistance and very importantly in its grant programs, and we will talk about that before the end of my presentation, is we've been supporting the idea of regional food hubs because we believe that these centers for aggregation that are really focused on, in many cases, the ag of the middle type farmers are really provide a number of services that are very important to ensuring that farmers can optimize their access to markets. How do we define these regional food hubs? Well, we say they are a business organization that actively manages the aggregation, distribution, and marketing of source-identified food products, primarily from local and regional producers, to strengthen their ability to satisfy wholesale, retail, and institutional demand. Okay, defining characteristics of these, again, we've talked about the aggregation, distribution, and marketing. The focus is primarily on locally and regionally produced foods. They move product from multiple producers to multiple markets. Typically, the producers are continued valued business partners instead of interchangeable suppliers, and are involved in planning and coordination and continuous improvement. These food hubs are committed to buying from the small to mid-sized producers wherever possible, and they try to make effective use of product differentiation strategies, identity preservation, group branding, sustainable production practices that help ensure that producers have the ability to maximize returns from their products. So, also, many of them are engaged in helping producers meet bio requirements by providing TA or finding partners, often from land-grant communities, that can help provide that technical assistance and help mentor new farmers and teach them how to meet market specifications. Many of them are aimed to be financially viable while also having these positive economic, social, and environmental impacts within their communities. And there are a number that have food hub enterprises that have separate profit-based and non-profit-based divisions. For example, a 401c3 arm that can accept grants and carry out educational activities. This graph, won't spend much time here, I'm sure it's probably not terribly easy to read, but essentially shows you, the variety of services and amenities that regional food hubs can provide, and there's much more on this that I'll be able to lead you to on our food hub and value chain page at AMS. What you see here is from, before 1970 till currently. We believe there are about just over 300 food hubs in the United States, and we've just experienced a very, very rapid growth curve in the number of food hubs, with perhaps it plateauing a bit after a very, very steep rise. According to a survey undertaken by Michigan State University, the average revenue of food hubs that participated, over 100, was $3 million. Now the median was only $450,000, but again, revenue highly correlated with years in operation. And even within this small, nascent sector, more than half reported no dependence on external funding. And I know that MSU is working on a follow-up, and we probably will learn much more about the further development and potential of these enterprises. As many of you are very well aware, farmers retain a very small percentage of the final retail price on average, and looking at 212 figures, it was overall across all food items, 17 cents of the consumer food dollar expenditure. In using short supply chain examples, we are seeing quite a difference in the producer's ability to obtain a greater share of that final price. In particular, food hubs often return between 75 to 85% of their wholesale sales revenues to their producers. Over here, and you can look at your leisure later, these are examples of a 2009 report from Economic Research Service, probably one of the earliest, that looked at several case studies across commodities in different parts of the country, and it was determined that local producers received up to 7 times the price compared to mainstream supply chains. But thought it'd be useful here to talk, just to give you a few examples of how we've seen it working in real life. Meeting with folks at Intervale Food Hub in Burlington, they've noted that their producers generally net 60 to 70% of the retail revenue obtained from sales through their CSAs, and 85% of the revenue obtained from distribution to wholesale customers through their hub. In the case of red tomato, in Canton, Massachusetts, they coordinate aggregation, transportation, and sales for roughly 40 farmers to grocery stores in the Northeast. Case study that actually appeared in the Harvard Business Review. A retailer agreed to sell red tomatoes at $2.79 a pound, compared to the standard retail price for the same commodity of $1.99 per pound, given the unique attributes of the product, which is in particular they using IPM, integrated pest management, and limited inputs. And the combination of the cost savings in sharing logistics and the higher wholesale price led red tomatoes producers to receive 3 times the return that they received for comparable items outside the value chain. Okay. One example that I wanted to bring to mind here had to do with a recent agreement between Roundy's Incorporated, which is manages several regional supermarkets in Wisconsin. Excuse me. And they formed a partnership in August 2013 with the Wisconsin Food Hub Cooperative based in Madison to supply produce to a number of the stores that Roundy's manages. In 2013, largely as a result of this agreement, the Wisconsin Food Hub Cooperative generated approximately $3 million in produce revenues, even though it only been in operation a year. From the buyer perspective, Roundy says the program's been well received by customers as well as management. Working with the Wisconsin Food Hub, Roundy's and our customers know that the produce is 100% local from Wisconsin. One of their chains, Pick and Save, which is the market leader in metropolitan Milwaukee, uses point-of-purchase displays, among other things, to promote the program. And I would say that this is the way of effectively telling the story of the farmer and really reinforcing the concept that we're dealing with, you're affecting real lives when you buy local, and and I think that is a very commonly adopted and effective way of attracting customers to local by giving them information about who benefits from their purchases, sometimes even bringing in farmers for sampling. In the case of Roundy's, they're able to get their food from the farm to warehouse and on its way to grocery stores as quickly as 24 hours from when the produce is picked. According to the sales manager for the co-op, you can't get any fresher unless you walked into a field and picked it yourself. The cooperative is now up to 100 members, and we're starting to see some of the members expand their business because of the new market access they've been able to achieve through the partnership. And they're also finding that concern about the drought in California and western states is also helping to encourage some of the buyers to want to look for local sources, because they don't also want to be entirely dependent on sourcing product from outside the region if they have an alternative. In an article that appeared in a Milwaukee paper, I saw this quote which I thought was really fascinating. I haven't found too much. I have to look into this issue more, because I haven't seen a lot of other substantiating information on it. But quotes a supermarket consulting company in Atlanta, W.L. Justin. There's also a demonstrated sales game that comes from locally grown food programs in grocery stores. He has seen examples of such programs increasing sales by as much as 15 to 20% in the produce department. And when you recognize what a tight margin business the grocery industry is. That's very significant, nothing to be sneezed at. So what else is going on that seems to be driving demand for local food? Well, among them is certainly a very proactive outreach by USDA, both through my own agency, AMS, Food and Nutrition Service, to encourage redemption of SNAP benefits at farmers markets and CSAs. And you can see from this chart that the SNAP participation increased from redemption at around 900 sites in 2009 to more than 6,400 in 2014, largely the result of installing EBT equipment and having grants that would pay for labor and expenses, and the rise of a number of nonprofit organizations that are involved in providing matching funds and vouchers to supplement SNAP benefits at farmers markets and the like. Another phenomenon that's happened is we've started to see a rise of mobile farmers markets in low-income neighborhoods as a means of addressing issues related to scarcity of fresh foods in certain neighborhoods and food security issues. So here, we are actually, my colleague Samantha is working with folks at the University of Wisconsin who are doing some comprehensive analysis of a number of these mobile market programs, and we hope to have a report out on them later this calendar year on what we've learned from those examples. Another demand driver for local food is certainly the greater flexibility we're seeing in the schools, and that has a lot to do with changes in the Farm Bill, which allowed for different interpretation and taking geographic preference into account in the bid process, as well as the creation of the USDA Farm to School Grant Program in 2012 and the creation of some funding programs in individual states such as Oregon in 2013. So from a handful of programs in the late 1990s, Farm to School programs now exist in more than 4,000 sites. They serve over 23 million students in all 50 states. And these schools spend more than $385 million on local food per year, according to the latest ERS census on Farm to School. Other potential demand drivers here is we're seeing the increased number of farmers markets operating at hospitals and healthcare facilities. Kaiser Permanente, certainly on the West Coast, has been among the lead drivers of this. We have more than 50 reported in our own National Farmers Market Directory online. There's a recent campaign to introduce them at VA hospitals. We're also seeing DoD actively involved in expanding farmers markets on base and introducing local food in commissaries and cafeterias through the new DoD Healthy Base Initiative. So, as I move towards the end of my presentation, I wanted to relate all of the trends and all of the developments we're seeing to what AMS is doing to really help growers, especially the small to mid-sized grower, connect better with market demand and meet the needs of consumers. I'm going to do so by talking about what connects us through our legislative authority to local food, division structure to a small degree, the kind of work we do, research and technical assistance, and the grant programs that we and other AMS partners administer. Okay, so one thing that may surprise you is that really our interest and our involvement in local food is very much embedded in our authorizing legislation. In the 1946 Ag Marketing Act, our agency is mandated to reduce distribution costs and the price spread between producers and consumers. We are also directed to market the full production of American farmers, regardless of scale, in a useful, economical, profitable, and orderly manner. And a primary policy goal is the improvement of overall dietary and nutritional standards. This emphasis on this producer-oriented emphasis on reducing the role of intermediaries and making sure that we have an efficient marketing system was then further directed towards direct marketing by the 1976 Farmer to Consumer Direct Marketing Act, which encouraged us to promote direct marketing activities, farm marketing activities, for the mutual benefit of farmers and consumers. Okay, so what does this mean? We are mandated to support the development and creation of shorter food supply chains wherever feasible. We work to ensure that food producers receive a greater share of the final retail price that consumers pay. We support profitable marketing of all American farmers at all scale levels. And we promote direct marketing of farm products where it provides mutual benefit to farmers and consumers. So how do we do this? Well, in our farmers market and direct-to-consumer marketing work, and you can read more about this on our website, we use market research analysis and data products and other tools to help stakeholders better understand trends in direct-to-consumer marketplace. We maintain, and many of you know this, we have 4 national directories on local food at this www.usda.localfooddirectories.com location. We have had a farmers market directory for many, many years. It currently contains over 8,500 market listings with an abundant amount of information about the product mix and how many vendors and their hours of operation, and including embedded mapping directions and everything for the patron on the go. We just launched last year 3 new local food directories on CSAs, community supported agriculture, of course, food hubs, and on-farm markets, and really look to you in the audience today to help us provide information, help us get additional listings. We know that we haven't covered the entire universe here. We're trying to get the word out, but we do try to stay on the cutting edge. Just a point of pride here is that our National Farmers Market Directory was the first app that the federal government developed in 2013 because of popular interest. And we also have OMB approval to conduct regular information collections on farmers market managers, and we're trying to do the same thing and get it through OMB on voluntary surveys that are connected to our directory. So anything you can do to help support us, we will be very appreciative. Part of the other parts of the work that we do, as indicated before, we really the champion USDA and spearheaded a lot of the work that has been done here on food hubs and aggregation models. Many of the reports we participated in and conducted are available from our website. Happy to discuss them later. I see that Tim Woods is typing, and I should mention that Tim Woods is the lead researcher on a report that will be coming out later this year on community-supported agriculture, based on a national survey that he undertook, as well as focus groups in 6 states, and we're very excited about the information that's contained in there and its repercussions for the industry. We also have a staff architect and who does facility design and provides site assessment, design services, and layout analysis for food market and facility personnel. And these are designed to improve the efficiency of permanent food market distribution and warehouse facilities. Brief overview of some of our reports: Regional Food Hub Resource Guide, Moving Food Along the Value Chain, Food Value Chains, Creating Shared Value to Enhance Marketing Success. In this one we have a synopsis available, presentations, and a study guide for those of you who might be interested in using this material in the classroom. We also have a new publication from earlier this year for those who are interested in figuring out what it might cost and take to construct and develop a food hub. This is based on a study of Tuscarora Organic Growers, which has been operating in Pennsylvania for 30 years and has managed to stay debt-free while continually adding to its layout and expanding its capacity. And we thought that their model of kind of lean expansion and would be very helpful for others who are considering who are different transitional points of their food hub business. Again, looking forward, I mentioned the study on CSAs, the evolving CSA business model, which will be coming out before the end of the year. A local food economic assessment toolkit, which is being overseen by Colorado State University with the contribution of several land-grant university faculty members. It's a guide for creating a community assessment of local food activities using secondary primary data and in-plan input-output software. If you go to www.localfoodeconomics.com, you can see some of the preliminary results. This just went into clearance this week. I hope that we will have it out in the street in a couple of months. And again, I mentioned my colleague is overseeing our work on mobile markets, so we hope to have a report out in the next few months on there as well. Let me talk a bit about our grant programs, Farmers Market Promotion Program. The mission here is to increase domestic consumption of and access to locally and regionally produced agricultural products, and to develop new market opportunities for farm and ranch operations serving local markets. Those of you who are familiar with FMPP recognize it has a very diverse applicant eligibility. Almost everybody is included except for state governments and individual producers. The idea here being to really have this reach out to people that are involved at the grassroots. These only fund direct producer-to-consumer marketing activities such as farmers markets and CSAs and on-farm markets and the like. This year, about $13 million was available in funding, and we expect awards to be announced momentarily before the end of this month. Local Food Promotion Program. This was launched in 2014. This year is the second year of the program. About $13 million also available for this program. We have planning and implementation grants. The applicant eligibility is similar to that of FMPP. We do expect the announcement of this year's awards before the end of September. And in contrast to FMPP, this LFPP program is designed to support intermediated sales of locally and regionally produced agricultural products. Wanted to share just one example, exciting example of a local food promotion program grant. It's to the South Central Farmers Cooperative. They sell, actually, pardon me, it looks like this was probably an FMPP grant. They sell their organically grown produce at 17 Los Angeles area farmers markets through a 3,000-member CSA and to corner stores, bodegas, and restaurants. A portion of their initial produce and any leftovers from market are used to make 70 value-added products, salsa, tomato sauces, vegetable chips, powdered herb and spice blends. It mostly serves low-income neighborhoods in Los Angeles, and the co-op receives 92% of the income from its sales. You see some of the pictures here of their operation and their branded product. Then we have Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. We at AMS oversee the management of the grants, but the grants themselves are administered by state departments of agriculture. The amount of funding is prorated based on a state contribution to the national share of specialty crop production. As most of you know, specialty crops are defined by Congress as fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, dried fruits, horticulture, and nursery crops, including floriculture. This year, there was about $63 million in funding available, and last week, our administrator announced a new multi-state specialty crop block grant program. There will be a teleconference on this program on September 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The deadline for submitting applications is January 14th, 2016. This is designed primarily to support food safety and research, address plant, pest, disease, and crop-specific issues, and of course, increase marketing opportunities for specialty crops. It is open to state departments of agriculture in the 50 states, D.C., Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. It must involve at least 2 partners located in different states. USDA encourages other state agencies, tribal governments, universities, nonprofits, and other specialty crop trade organizations to partner with the participating state departments of agriculture. This year's priority areas include benefiting underserved communities and veterans, improving producers and facilities' capacity to comply with the Food Safety Modernization Act, developing adaptation and mitigation strategies for farmers in drought-stricken regions, developing strong local and regional food systems, so keep that in mind, protecting pollinator habitats and improving pollinator health, and supporting the growth of organic specialty crops. We also have the Federal State Marketing Improvement Program, which it might be of great interest to those of you that work for at a university with a state experiment station. This program, which has been around for quite some time, is a bit distinct from our other grant programs in that it has a broader mandate in terms of the scope of research. It is not purely about local food or direct marketing. It assists in exploring new market opportunities for U.S. food and agricultural products writ large, and to encourage research and innovation aimed at improving the efficiency and performance of the marketing system. It receives about $1 million in funding per year and funds approximately 20 projects per year. Matching funds can be made available to competing state departments of agriculture, state agricultural experiment stations, and other appropriate state agencies. Lastly, I want to talk very briefly about the cost share for organic certification, currently being administered by our National Organic Program. My understanding is this will migrate at some point to under our Transportation and Marketing Program in the Grants Division. Organic producers, as you may be aware, can be reimbursed up to 75% of their certification costs, not to exceed $750. The 2 organic certification cost share programs that are offered this year through the NOP were valued at nearly $12 million. They included the National Organic Certification Cost Share Program at $11 million and a supplemental Agricultural Management Assistance Organic Certification Cost Share Program at $900K, and that's available to organic crop and livestock operators in selected states as listed below. In 2014, USDA issued nearly 10,000 reimbursements totaling over $6 million to growers in the organic community. To learn more about this, you can look at the cost share website on National Organic Program's web pages. Please note that for this year, of course, reimbursement is only available through September 30th, 2015, so time is of the essence. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. On the last slide here is my contact information. I see a few of you have had a few questions, and maybe I'll take a look and see if I can answer any. And some look like they might require a little more investigation.
And more questions. So if I can run through these, so you don't have to read all of those. The first one I saw is, do farmers report their fruit and vegetable sales to USDA annually?
You know, NASS does. I mean, this is really a question asked NASS about the scope of it. They do some. I mean, yeah, there are some annual reports that are mandatory, but you know, not necessarily information that would help us understand local food sales in particular. That's the tricky part. We have basically, ERS has been working with the ARMS data set, Agricultural Resource Management, and doing some supplemental surveys that on a more frequent basis than the 5-year Census of Agriculture, in order to tease out the importance of direct and or local sales. But I would say that our data collection capacities are quite imperfect. Happy to discuss that more with whomever asked the question offline.
Okay, and Tim, I'm going to come back to you, but if you could clarify the context of your question since it's several slides back, the one about the 7 times price or 7 times share, I'll come back to that if you'll type it in. Meanwhile, I'm going to drop to the next question. Does anyone have data on potential buying power of institutions by sector, examples, hospitals, schools, universities?
You know, I don't know if, I would say a lot of that's really being done like on a case study basis. I haven't seen anything that has attempted to look at it, but it'd be interesting to, we've supported a number of grants that have looked at and have supported, like, hospital purchases. For example, we did one with Healthcare Without Harm in Maryland. We did 2 different rounds and had some really tremendous success. So I think that we have some very solid examples that give sense of market potential in particular areas and probably identify some indicators that both support or create obstacles towards hospital purchasing. I can tell you that certainly having food hubs around, like, there are some that really specialize in hospitals. For example, Blue Ridge Food Hub out here in Virginia, I know that they supply local food to Georgetown Hospital and others. I know that Relay Foods is involved in Charlottesville in working with the Bon Secours system. But I don't know about, perhaps others on the line know more as I see them typing, but I'm more aware of probably statewide efforts than I am of national data, and we don't have the data sources that we have from USDA tend to be focused, from the farm, from the producer, not so much where it goes, and it's kind of hard for us to make any claims in terms of how those sales are allocated to final user or wholesale user.
And I do see that Jeff has noted that there's the farm to school census done by FNS. It might also be a good resource.
Actually, Jeff, the farm to school census is done by ERS. They may have some involvement from the farm to school team, but I'm just blanking on the. Yeah, but it's actually the ERS economists that have undertaken it. Catherine Ralston is the person who heads it up at ERS.
Okay.
But thanks. Thanks for playing.
So moving to another question. Might it be possible for AMS to develop directories and information on auctions?
Oh, I saw that was Tim's question, right? Yeah. It's an interesting question. We can talk about that, Tim, because I think to some degree what we want to talk about is how do we integrate that too with market news. Okay, because market news, I should mention, that's something I didn't mention in this, is that our F&V market news group at AMS is doing a lot more work in capturing prices from farmers markets and other market sites other than the traditional wholesale produce markets. They're trying to start to work with food hubs as well as capturing price information and getting a better sense of how that compares to, I guess, quote unquote, mainstream supply chain price discovery. So that's something certainly to discuss. I'd be interested, Tim, in why I think it's important. I think it might be regionally more important in certain areas, but you're probably right that in the Mid-Atlantic and perhaps some of the area you're working in the Southeast, it's particularly important. I keep on hearing about it being of greatest importance in areas where we see a lot of Amish and Mennonite fruit and vegetable growers, if you would agree. And I've heard a couple of people raise the issue, so happy to talk about it. We'll see what we can do. Is there any data? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah,
what else do you have on that list?
So we have 2 more questions in the chat at the moment. So to Tim, food hubs benefits sometimes can be overstated for farmer prices. What about emerging roles for traditional wholesalers or distributors working more and more with local food market opportunities?
Right. I mean, I think this, something that I certainly believe is that there are likely expanding roles for, say, the specialized local distributor, like, Keeney Foods in this area that does a lot of local procurement. They've been doing local procurement for 30 years in this area, supplying Flight's restaurant chain and others. Yeah, I think that local food market definitely opens up opportunities for local/regional distributors that are already plugged into, particularly I think the restaurant space or the, kind of the same like regional chains, and supplying the service and the responsiveness that's necessary and understanding how to get the job done. So I don't mean to limit the opportunities just to say that food hubs are the only way to go. I don't believe the only way to go. I think that food hubs, and in fact, there are some food hubs that I think operate a little more like traditional brokers. They may provide a little more TA and education. I can think in your home state, Tim, is it Hudson Fruit Company? That to me, I think it's like privately held and, very much, to me, has many of the characteristics of a traditional broker, but, maybe it does a little more hand-holding than some, and has been very successful that way in being able to recruit commercial fruit growers to participate in their marketing. And I see Tim is typing, which is good. But you're right. There's probably room for different kinds of operations, and in fact, the food hub world is very diverse, as is the world of, thank you, okay. So I think you're right. We shouldn't look at it as being a, one particular formula. In fact, what we are seeing overall, and I bet it will be confirmed even further by new stuff coming out of Michigan State, is that the food hub world, and we're starting to see some groups shake out, that, while the nonprofits may have been in the lead originally, we're really seeing the majority of them being privately held and operated. So, and their business model is changing a bit, and maybe more in line with what some traditional distributors. By the same token, and then I'll move on to other questions. Sorry about this. Some of these are complicated questions. We are just completing a study. We did data collection of the Philadelphia wholesale produce market, and we're finding that the volume of local sales is really surprisingly low, even though the market management team there would be very interested in being seen as a destination for locals. So I think there's a lot of work to be done among, connecting farmers of commercial size with traditional wholesale operators in many respects.
I think we'll take one last question, as we're just a little past the hour. But there's one question here: Are there any data regarding community economic development through local food workforce development?
Workforce development. Oh man, I love this question. Because where are you from, guest 3? Are you from Pennsylvania by any chance? Because there just looks like the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture is just taking that on as an actual issue. I don't know of any data. I do know that, can y'all hear me? Okay. I don't know of any data, but I know of some initiatives that have tried to incorporate workforce development and local food systems. And we can talk offline if you want. It's just starting. But I think there's real room for growth in that area. But yes, Pennsylvania Department of Ag has just started a new program that tries to do exactly that. Yay, good. Thank you, Hannah. I'd like to know more about what you guys are doing, because that's really fascinating to me. I did a detail at Department of Labor in workforce development a couple of years ago, and I've been thinking this is an area that really needs to be explored.
It looks like you've hit something there that lots of folks are interested in, so we'll look forward to hearing more on that. Want to thank you, Deborah, for your time here. You've certainly shared a wealth of information. We will have this recording posted on the site, and if you scroll back up there a little bit, you'll see where that post site is, and I'll drop it back in the end here again so that you can see it. But thank you again, Deborah. Appreciate all of you.
Thank you all
for taking time out to join us. This has been very, very, very informational. We really appreciate you sharing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.